Welcome back to the BT6 Boss Tournament 2, Part 2. A massive tournament where the top 96 players will compete in a group stage and playoff to see who is the best player. It is recommended but not required that you check out Part 1. I will have a playlist containing these videos as the weeks progress. Just as a quick summary and overview of the qualifier stage, I guess you could say I sandbagged and I got a really bad score. But thankfully none of that matters, because if you're first or last in the qualification, you are still in the same group with no advantage, no extra points. I am in Group C, and I need to be top 8 in this group out of 32 after 3 weeks of group stage to advance to the 32-player playoffs. Enough yap, this is what Week 1's first challenge is. Elite Dreadbloon least cash. Restrictions, no Mermonkey bottom path, and no Damned Monkey. The twist is that each player will choose the map they play on, so you have to decide what will get the lowest least cash score between Moon Landing, Luminous Cove, Spring, and Adora's Temple. Players have 1 week to complete this. Now, unlike the qualifier, I definitely can't sandbag the group stage, so for the next week, I basically no-life this game, and I'll tell you how much time I spent in the end. But first off, I have to explain to you how I ended up taking out maps from the equation. Starting off with Moon Landing, I quickly erased this one from the possibilities because of the line of sight blockers that are all over the map. And the best least cash towers are generally low damage, high attack speed, like say Attack Zone or Sentry Champion. Neither of which can see very well at all here, so the next best option would have to be Sun Avatars, but given how many you need to do well, and them taking up huge footprints, and you needing multiple categories in Elite Dreadbloon. Yeah, even though this is the longest map by RBS out of the 4, we can't do it. For the record, RBS stands for Red Bloon Seconds, how long it takes a Red Bloon to exit a map, aka the length of the map. The higher the number, the longer the map is, which was only partially part of my decision making here. For Luminous Cove at 27, second lowest, I also quickly wrote this one off because water, and you can't, again, use TAC or Sentry Champion very well. Obviously doable would say Arctic Wind and the Chinook to move things around constantly, but no thanks, Chief. Destroyers are really good, and they still have a huge line of sight issue too. Which leads us to 2 maps remaining, and after some long, extensive testing, taking several hours, I basically ran a test to see what towers are actually most efficient on tier 5. And these are some really rough numbers, but unsurprisingly, as I said earlier, Attack Zone and Sentry Champion are up on top. But the third best thing I found was a giant Bloon Jitsu Shinobi army, which is then followed by destroyers. And that's why I'm doing this test run on Spring, because on Adora's Temple, how can you really make a giant effective army when there is 1, a huge line of sight issue, and 2, Dreadbloon kind of going all over the map, meaning there's no one spot you can put it. It's going to be very inefficient. So yeah, ultimately, I decided let's do Spring. Not to spoil too much, but throughout this run, there's going to be a lot of twists and turns, so get ready for that. And buckle in, tightly ideally. Starting off with a free Dart Monkey into a farm, I should also note that in this video, there's going to be absolutely 0 live commentary. Every commentary is being done after the fact, because these boss runs, again, require a level of locked in and dedication that is pretty much makes it impossible to talk live at the same time. Or it's more so the fact that I don't know which run is actually the final run, so no point talking about a run that isn't close to my final. So yeah, just a heads up, I talk a lot about least cash being the fact that really only the last tier matters. It won't really be a struggle to at least beat the other couple tiers, but there were a lot of little intricacies throughout this run that I guess made more than just the last tier matter. Number 1 being the fact that we need to go for a temple, a support temple. Support temple gives a whopping 20% discount to every tower in radius, so long as you sacrifice $50,000 of support. And that's why in this early game here, you kind of want to do your best to buy as few non-support towers as possible. That's why it's okay to drop an NG down alongside my farm. And also, do use farm, because that can just be used to sacrifice fodder later. You gotta spend 50k no matter what, that can't be discounted. Anyway, bank on round 21, and a rare sentry usage, top path, because again, it doesn't really matter. Anything to survive the early game. Spring was pretty tough. It's pretty tough of a map though. I have to have Azili in the front for her damage over time to work, but in doing so, round 28 is an issue. I have to, unfortunately, spend money on an Alchemist just to be able to handle the fortified leads. If I put Azili in the back, then she just doesn't do as much damage. Hopefully I'm not forgetting a couple details to here, because this is several days after this run. But there were so many little things I had to optimize to get the perfect run. IMF alone on round 32. The AI rounds get very tricky, so I actually have to get a cash out very early for a round 34 Bloon Trap. And only now at the end of round 36 can we finally go for the Monkeyopolis. And now if I do get non-support towers before Temple, I have to do my best to make them as cheap as possible too. So the triple discount comes out immediately, and we make sure to get the Heli Pilot under triple discount. Heli Pilot is to Chinook towers around, because the best DPS towers, i.e. Tax Zone and Sentry Champion, need to constantly be moved to have the best chance of doing the most damage. Now, on to Tier 1. After 300 hours of figuring out what is the least I can spend to beat this tier, non-support wise, this is what I settled on. We have to get the Super Monkey no matter what, so the Sun Avatar is like a pretty obvious choice to get. But alongside that, first a primary mentoring into a tack and a glue. Overdrive and Glue Strike was the, I guess, cheapest combo I could find. In an effort to save even more money, yes, I did not even cross-path the tack fully. I only used the free upgrade from mentoring, so it's only a 104, but that was enough to get through. What's really annoying about Dry Bloon also is, at least for early game Tier 1, is that on his non-shielded phase, he takes -1 damage from every single attack, meaning the Sun Avatar and tack actually do nothing. It's really just Azili at least getting through the immune to primary stage, which is why the Glue Strike is 1000% necessary. It gives a +2 damage buff, so now they can actually do damage. I would have done Embrittlement, but after some testing, its +1 damage doesn't actually apply to Dread Bloon, because the main attack does 1 damage already, which is -1 to 0, and so the debuff doesn't apply, because I guess it applies after the fact. Something like that, IDK. Glue Strike was so much more expensive, but yeah, unfortunately, that had to be done. And after a lot of Chinooking and trying to avoid those pesky rock balloons from leaking, we do it. Tier 1 is done. I forgot to record in between tiers here, but we ended up getting the support tempo on like round 57, 58, and now, after dropping 3 discount villages again, we are free to buy every single tower we want. Unfortunately, the way I place my discount villages, every single one of them has to be Chinook though, and if you know Ninja Armies, and you saw the test run at the very start, you kind of need a lot of towers. So the tricky part about this run in the middle stages was actually making sure the rounds lasted long enough to be able to constantly Chinook, because there was only 60 rounds left until Tier 5, and the Chinook is like on a 45 to 1 minute cooldown. There actually is a chance that I can't Chinook everything in time, and I have to eventually buy my final towers, not under triple discount. In case you're wondering, why don't I place the villages closer to where my Ninja Army is? Well, the thing is, you also want to discount your water towers too. I tried doing a run without the 4th best option, i.e. destroyers, and it just wasn't enough DPS. So if I do add those, I couldn't get triple discount to work because it'd be way too far away. But double discount is a decent compromise. So those 2 villages down there with a Azili totem are enough to buy water towers under a 2x discount instead of 3. One more note also is that by Tier 5, I will get the temple to 420. However, I don't think I bought all of the upgrades on it. It's only at 410 right now. That's because if I buy too much range, then it's going to attack the entrance. And as I said earlier, I need to get as many Chinook abilities as possible, so stalling for rounds would be ideal. Unfortunately, I couldn't ever get it to work. Even at 410, it still has enough range to one-tap say Regress at the entrance, so I was unsuccessfully unable to stall any of the rear rounds, so by tier 3, this is really all I have Chinook. Still a lot of work to go. I did add an Energizer, not only to make the Chinooking 20% faster, but in general, I think based on testing, it is good to have. Higher homeland uptime means more sentries on screen, and same with Glue Strike. Now, because of the nerf that they made it 40 seconds, you kind of need 2 to cover the full uptime, the +2 damage, unless you get Energizer, in which case, on top of Prime Entering, it's already like 90-95%, so no need for a second Glue Strike, which is good. Log Grizzly uptime as well, and that allows me to skip the Call to Arms, at least for this run here. All in all, I felt it was too important to give up. Now, let's talk about the amount of ninjas I need. I ended up deciding on 17, because when I tested with 16, it just wasn't enough, and 18 was too many. 17 seemed like the sweet spot, while also leaving enough wiggle room to add 20 Shinobis. Like, even though Swing is the best map for the ninja army because of the open space, there still is, like, a lot of unopened space, i.e. the water on top, so that's why some of the Shinobis have to be put on some of the side islands, which definitely don't cover all of the Jitsu, so that kind of leads to me having to buy a couple more Shinobis than would be ideal. Like, in the perfect scenario, you would want exactly 20 Shinobis to cover all of the ninjas, but that was not the case. I think I ended up settling on 25 to 30. That varies depending on the amount of tryharding I decide to do by the end. Thing is, we can decide on that amount last, because I'm, again, not even close to fielding anything. In fact, the later rounds end up going even faster. I don't really even get breathing room either, because it's not just, like, Chinooking every 45 seconds or so, it's also making sure they're jam-packed as closely as possible. You don't want to waste space. Any waste space leads to maybe requiring 1 extra Shinobi than normal. So that's why it was kind of important to also beat the boss fairly quickly, so I at least have, again, breathing room between tiers. We end up killing this one on round 91, leaving me with 9 more rounds to build the following. Again, not much different, as you can see. Also note for this tournament, you only have to record during your boss kills. They don't need to see in between. And even though we would probably make for better content, I kind of forgot. I was too lost in sauce that I didn't really record in between tiers very much. Although I'll fill you in. Speaking of filling you in, I must address the Dart Monkey in the Broom. Why I am using a bunch of 000 Dart Monkeys under the Sentry Champion is because to manipulate the Sentry Champion spots, they spawn where balloons are near, and they'll prioritize nearer to the track. So if those Dart Monkeys were not there, the sentries could spawn down, and that isn't where I want it. So we can kind of centralize the location by kind of filling in the space all below it, and therefore getting the greatest coverage possible. This is going to come in really handy for tier 5. I'm not done filling in those darts yet. What you're seeing is also not the first recording of tier 3 or 4. It's like the 5th after I backtracked multiple times to make sure I got exactly how I wanted. So yeah, that was very annoying. What is annoying at this point? Even though I backtracked multiple times, I still couldn't get the, I think, perfect run, because by the end of tier 4 here, there's like 5 rounds left. I still have like 10 Shinobis to go. I'm not getting 10 Chinooks in that amount of time. So what do? Well, nothing other than to wave in the white flag and admit defeat. I unfortunately couldn't 3x discount every single Shinobi. There were like maybe 5 or so that could only be fit under 1 or 2 that were under 2. Thankfully, the ones to the next and right above the Prime Entering, you could drop them for X3 discount without having to Chinook, so that saved, I guess, a little bit of money, but we're off in efficiency by, I would say, 1,000 or 2,000 in the setup, due to not having triply discounted everything. And in fact, this run, now that we start tier 5, I didn't even finish Chinooking all of my Shinobis yet. There's one down there that needs a move in. Big oof, but as it stands, this score would currently be, as you see, 563k. I have exactly 4 destroyers because 3 was far off. And note, 2 overclocks, 1 for the Sentry Champion, 1 for the tax zone. However, while the tax zone, or if one of the 2 are currently not able to damage Dread Bloon, I will overclock either the destroyer or the ninja, whichever one is doing more damage. Usually it's the ninja, but if Dreddy's on top of one of the destroyers, then I think the DPS is pretty damn close. One Chinook is also barely enough to cover everything I need, because those boats you see on the left side, they will need to be moved to the right side by the end of this. But not first before moving the tax zone. I left the tax zone initially in a spot where it would start damaging, like hitting all the tax the moment it hits to the military phase, but when Dreddy goes up top, we must move it, obviously, even higher up, which unfortunately doesn't have a jungle drums buff on it. I don't think there was any way could have, unless I spent money on a village, but I didn't think it was worth all that money. And I had in total 20 free Dart Markers I could have used, and I'm gonna use almost every single one of them. That Monkey City is super clutch. Otherwise, I'd have to spend money to up my score to manipulate these sentries. But as Dread Bloon slowly moves away from the Sentry Champion, I feel in the left spots where it was initially good at the beginning with Dart Monkeys, because I want them to spawn further and further right until it becomes a radical. So this run wasn't even fully perfect either, because ideally, when you move the tax zone to the right side, you'd have every single tack hit when you hit military phase number 2, but it was kind of in no man's land. So that's something that definitely can be improved on, along with the timing of moving Sentry Champion from left to right. I left a little bit of a pocket on the right side too, to where sentries could spawn in, although this is the trickiest part to handle Chinook, because there's so many. You need to move the Super Riddle, the Sentry Champion, the Destroyers, and tax zone. That I did have a couple of sentries not doing any damage on the left side for a bit, because I was waiting for the Chinook cooldown. But that's okay, it's just run number 1. We can make this a little bit better. So fast forwarding to near the end, how much leeway do we have for a run that I would say I executed at a B+ level? Know that because of the lag, even with my decent specs, each tier 5 run took 15 to 20 minutes. So optimizing this with how long each run takes is going to take longer than reading a 10 million page novel. That'll be fun, but yeah, look at this. A lot of leeway. It's only round 136, and Dread Bloon still has a lot to go until the exit. Granted, you don't want to wait till the exit, because you can't replace anything good there. But there's that, and now what's next? What is there to cut? Well, I decided to do 1 Shinobi at a time. Now we're at 560. This is 3k better than the score before, because I also optimized the Shinoking a little bit more. So a couple more were able to be triply discounted. And that's why if this run holds, it'll be a 560k. I did so many runs that I forgot how well I executed this one, but again, there still appears to be a good amount of track length remaining, but we're kind of pushing it. It wasn't an A+, S+ run, so upon victory screening, I was thinking I could probably cut 2, maybe at most 3 more Shinobis before it's not possible, which rough estimate would put my score maybe around 555k or something like that. But before I could attempt those runs, something happened. I have to restart from scratch. It's because of this stupid ass tower, which I did not test initially because I was pretty sure it was below the list in efficiency. And that is true. Even in some testing, I think it did perform in damage per second efficiency below the destroyer. That's because of this nerf a while ago that made it so that max start of vengeance is only 50% extra damage instead of 100. So I thought that tower was pretty much cooked until I decided to do some testing on it, and what do you know, even though it is less efficient than the tax zone and the Sentry Champion by a solid amount, it looked like there was a good chance on Adora's Temple it could edge out the Spring run. Don't look at the number in the test run, I was just spamming random shit, but it looked like to me that this map could probably outperform the most optimized Spring run I could do. So just like that, 15 or something hours on the Spring run went down the drain. And at that point, I wanted to curl up into a ball and just evaporate from the universe. Turn me into a paste, just... I don't know. Okay, silver lining at least is that some of that knowledge from the first one can be put here, but for the most part, a lot of those are wasted. The map is completely different, the farming is completely different. Not by too much though, you don't really have to optimize the early game unless cash is an issue, and thankfully cash is not an issue. So let's take it again from the top here. I guess I basically did use the exact same towers I did for the early game and for tier 1 as well. It was also a tack and a glue strike for tier 1. I eventually did buy 2 tier 4 here. Couldn't be bothered to save like $30 to make tier 1 hell, because rock balloons are actually much harder on this map. Reason being is that they take away the targeting priority. If you target strong, it'll target the rocks over Dread Balloon, and on first, it will sometimes be the rock balloons because they're kind of all over the place. Annoying for tier 1 and will be even more annoying for tier 5. So in place of the Ninja Army is like, what, $100,000 if not more? The Avatar Wrath is only like $40,000. So what is going to be used in replacement of it? I said I could just barely edge the score, but if I just simply replace the Ninja Army with Avatar Wrath and no destroyers to boot, then wouldn't I absolutely smash the previous score? Yes, but it obviously wouldn't even be close if I simply replaced only that. So instead, that overclock you see during tier 2 here is to be turned into an Ultra Boost. That is still cheaper than the Ninja Army, if only, you know, by a hair. So the goal right now is to get that as soon as possible so that I can start Ultra Boosting as many things as possible. There's not too much. It's not going to be as annoying Chinook, especially on a faster cooldown. But optimizing it does matter because there are still pop lusts that buff the Avatar Wrath that would be good to have 10x Ultra Boosted, because that is a decent amount of damage to be added. However, I'm skipping on the cross path on them because I didn't think I needed it. So that will only be 003, 004, and I thought this map would be easier than Spring because there is a decent amount of space where the Chinook can kind of do its thing, create a rigger farm. Unfortunately, because it's under range of the heli pilot, or it's under range of the support temple discount, the Chinook ends up becoming too strong that it destroys the rigger balloons too quickly. So I failed miserably and couldn't, you know, stall around infinitely to get 10x Ultra Boost in a round. So at least in this run here, which I finally did record in between sets, I couldn't 10x Ultra Boost every Druid of Wrath, and I don't think I ever will. Note, I'm also using the Azili Totem in between rounds to be able to activate the life loss. You need, again, 50 lives lost to maximize the amount of attack speed. It's actually less, but yeah, that's besides the point. That's how I manipulate it. So I also have to kind of stop using the Chinook crate ability, which is fine, because money is not an issue. It gives lives, though, and you don't want that. So I just spam the Azili Totem whenever it's up to lose 10 lives at a time, and to put my life count low enough to have a strongest attack speed Druid, I have to get all those in advance. So if I do end up having to cut Pop Lust later, like drop it from 5 to 4, I have to rewind all the way back to this point, unfortunately. But a couple other things different from this run versus Spring. The Energizer can be triply discounted because of the Ultra Boost. Gives a decent range bonus to the villages, and I have it placed in a good enough spot where it does barely reach 3x. Unfortunately, even if I 10x Ultra Boost the primary mentoring over there, it will not give a full Jungle Drums buff to everything in range. So later, I will have to add another Jungle Drums village to be able to fit on the top left side so that the towers placed there can have a Jungle Drums buff. I'm yapping up a storm at this point, so this looks like it might be one of my longest boss videos yet. Guess that's kind of what happens when you waste 15 hours on something that ends up not mattering at all. Kill me, will ya? But tier 3 and 4 is basically just a setup for tier 5. I need the towers in very specific placements to start. And ultimately, I settled on the following placements. For the Pop Lust, I decided to put it in the... I'm going to call it the third highest platform. There are 3 platforms in Adora's temple. Obviously, 4 tiny corner spots on the top, a middle section, and then where the Pop Lusts are. I'm deliberately putting it on a lower level, because that is also to manipulate sentry placements. I want them to spawn, you know, on a higher elevation. The higher the elevation, the more line of sight they get, and the less annoying it's gonna be. Okay, let's just cut to the chase. Tier 5, as you see, this is what my score would be if this following setup works. That is way better than the most optimal spring that I was thinking of. Just fudging unbelievably. If I decide to optimize this run even further, again, what would go is the pop plus, because I feel like I already optimized everything else. The temple, hell, doesn't even have 2 range bonuses, because I could place everything close enough in range to get it to work. So the only thing to cut is, again, 1 pop plus at a time or swapping out specific buffs. In the end, I think I was able to get 10x Ultra Boost on maybe 2 of the 5 pop plus and a couple more, so like half of the... I was missing, say, 25 to 30 Ultra Boost cycles from being fully optimal. Pretty brutal, but man, honestly, again, if I didn't spend 15, 20 hours on the Spring run, I think I would have more energy to keep on optimizing. But at this point, I was drained even harder than what would be if the hottest person in the world was sitting next to me. But this is only the beginning of optimizing the Adora's Temple run, because I think optimizing this map was much harder than Spring. Again, due to the rock balloon spawning, it was very hard for me to find a targeting priority that would always hit Dread Balloon, because on first, again, it would sometimes hit rocks. On close, it would sometimes not be Dread Balloon, and on strong, forget about that. So there were definitely some shots here where the Avatar Wrath was hitting rocks, but with only one Chinook is even harder on this map, because you have to move way more often than on Spring. I could not get it fully optimal. I would say my optimization for this run was a B. Actually, B-. There were so many things, again, I kind of done goofed, and this was after, like, the 5th attempt, because the thing is, you can't even back out during this 15-minute run. If you back out and go back in, you probably lose the homeland, and you need every little bit of attack speed that you can get. It's the year 2026, and 8 years in, they still don't save the homeland boost in between rounds. It just makes things so much harder. So not only does each run take 20 minutes, you have to get the perfect 20-minute run with no mistakes and no retrying. Or if you retry, you gotta start all over again. There were a lot more little details in between this run, but there are more runs after this, so the gist... It's also round 136, and Dread Balloon finally falls with, again, a decent amount of track length to go, so... It felt like to me, even though 1 pop plus is massive, 15% attack speed on one of your main DPS towers, it felt like there was some room, some wiggle room to improve, but not by much, not cutting 1 Shinobi at a time much. So the only logical step from here is to take it down 1 pop plus at a time. So this run is with 4, but I also was able to cut the jungle drums I spent in the top left earlier. I guess I didn't have to place the Sentry Champion all the way on the left side. Starting it on the island and still in range of that 1 jungle drums village will mostly spawn the sentries in the right area anyway, if I block it with Dart Monkeys like I did in Spring. There are, I think, 10 Ultra Boost stacks on that mentoring so that it's as big of a range as possible, so it can still reach the attack zone Roto up there, even with a totem buff. Not without a totem, though. Okay, fast forward all the way to the end, though, because this was not the final run, because I still, again, ended up beating it with a good amount of time to spare and not perfect execution. So at this point, I was like, okay, I think I'm just wasting my time here, dropping 1 at a time. Let's just go all the way to what I believe is the limit, or what I know is the limit. So I didn't do a real run with 3, I didn't do a real run with 2, but I did a real run with 1. 1 pop plus after 30,000 more hours of testing was, I believe, the lowest I could go before it felt too impossible, and that cuts my score an insane amount, all the way down to 535k. I did cross-path the pop plus accidentally in this run, or not accidentally, but I thought I needed the extra damage that 1 Thorn did. But again, I'll cut right to the end of this run because it was, again, not the final. I executed pretty well, I would say at an A+ level, and that beats it with still some wiggle room to spare. So yeah, that one Pop Star upgrade is only $140, but I mean, I've already spent 30 freaking hours at this point. How much would it hurt to do one more run with just one more upgrade cut? And so now finally I present to you my final submission. We have to first start with the prep. The prep actually starts 2 rounds before tier 5 spawns in. This is so that I can use the totem, the homeland, and the ultra boost at the exact right timing to again maximize the sentries that are dropped on the ground already. Because if you don't use it and only use it when you start the tier, then obviously it takes time to build the sentry up, but then you lose damage doing that. So that's a no-go, and off we go. The attack and the ice are also placed specifically in a spot where it still is in range of the Jungle Jumps village, even without the Zeely Totem, which is a small but noticeable difference. I'm not sure if I mentioned this already yet, because I'm recording this again over several days, but the sniper is cross-path to Shrapnel. Unfortunately, I tried multiple times without it, but I couldn't get 500 only to work because, again, the sniper would a lot of the time shoot at not Dread Bloon. You can try your best to Chinook the sniper on close all the time, constantly, but given you have to do the attack zone too, which is way more important. The extra Shrapnel makes a big difference because the Shrapnel does apply the debuff +5, even if for a shorter duration, so it can attack a sniper Rock Bloon directly, but also give the debuff to Dread Bloon. Whereas I wouldn't do that if I didn't have the crosspath, and that ends up leaving a lot of damage on the table. I believe my closest run was 500,000 damage off with 5 Zuzer, which would have saved me another 600, but anyways, this is probably my 20th attempt at attempting tier 5 or something like that to improve the score. But really, I didn't feel too annoyed at it, just because I knew this was truly the end. If I got a good run in, just one more good run, that's it. I don't have to play anymore. I am free. I am unchained. We're far from this point in the footage already, but note that everything I timed on round 18 was specifically so that I could ultra boost the attack zone the moment it hit the first military phase, so I don't, skip a single beat. I go from ultra boosting Avatar Wrath, then Sentry Champion, then attack zone, and then back to Sentry Champion in that specific order, because if I do Sentry Champion, Avatar Wrath, then attack zone, then the Sentry Champion, which does more damage than Avatar Wrath, would be missing the ultra boost, which is not what you want. Anyway, I did Chinook the sniper to the bottom side of the map. On close, it generally hits Dread Bloon, but there are some times where the rock on the right side is a little bit closer, which, left damage on the table, but I tried, man. But even with Energizer, it's so hard to put everything exactly where you want it, because especially when Dread Bloon's unshielded, it moves so fast that if you are caught with your pants down, i.e. the attack zone in a bad spot, and you don't have Chinook, then you're screwed. In fact, you want your highest DPS to be when it's in the unshielded phase so that Dread Bloon doesn't move as far. I tried my best to optimize that here, but there's not really much you can do. You most of the time want to use Homeland off cooldown, not wait around. I ended up Chinooking the sniper a second time just to make damn sure it would give me that +5. And this is important too, as Dread Bloon is approaching the final lane, it's going to go up in elevation, meaning the sentry is at a lower level on level 1. Stop attacking way earlier than if they spawned on level 2 and level 3. So that's why where my Sentry Champion is, like, I spam Dart Monkeys there when I Chinook the Zero Riddle and the attack zone. I fill a Dart Monkey in its place so that I get as many sentries spawning on level 2. One thing that worked in Sandbox, but I couldn't really get it to work in the real game, is having it spawned on level 3. But the thing is, I kind of need all 4 corner spots. If you have a tower placed there occupied, they will not spawn sentries, so there was unfortunately none of that. Not sure what I could have done about that, but here we have to unfortunately sacrifice a lot of damage on the table with the Sentry Champion no longer really being able to damage the magic phase. It's basically all on the attack zone at this point. That's a huge shoe to fill. Because it does go down in elevation eventually, though, I do use one Chinook to move Sentry Champion to the right side. And again, try to fill in as many free Dart Monkeys on lower elevation, so more can attack earlier. And I actually made a mistake here. When I was Shinnoking my attack zone to the right side, near the end of the magic phase, I messed up. I fat fingered and then ended up moving it up at a lower level. So it stopped attacking for like 5 seconds, and I thought that was the end. I thought that one mistake would have doomed me forever, because look, I have to beat one whole phase with that little time left. How is that even possible? At this point, I was almost sure that I would have to probably spend 15-20 more minutes again because of one little mistake I made 15 or 14 minutes in. But with this deep, so I had to see how close I was at least. So now that we moved the attack all the way to the right side, it's not even under the tempo range buff, which is scary. It's a lot of damage I am leaving on the table, and I don't have enough Chinooks to, again, balance. I would love to move my Avatar Wrath to the right side, but I can't. So instead, it's gotta be all on attack zone as we approach the final point, and I finally have a cooldown up. I was thinking about moving the Avatar Wrath, but I decided no. Attack zone better, attack zone better. I move it right under. I spam Homeland to get it barely up, and I'm down to 100k. And 0. And just like that, I can finally touch grass again. Again, I don't have an exact amount of time spent that I could say, but I would have to guess at least 24 to 30 hours spent playing the game, and probably even more than that if you try to consider, you know, theory crafting, thinking about the boss event while I'm showering, while I'm in bed. I again spent twice as long in this round than I honestly should have, so I will definitely keep note for the next rounds to spend as long as possible testing. Do not waste time trying to optimize a strategy that isn't even the final, because that is just not an efficient use of your time. And it's not sustainable putting in 30-40 hour weeks on one event. Anyway, if this does not at least place me top 2-3 in the group, which nets you 7 points, then I will be severely disappointed and might consider running off a cliff. So fast forward to round end and let's see the results. Here's the top 3, all done on Spring, bruh. The silver lining, at least, is that my score isn't too far off from the top 3, so I probably did pretty well, but more on that in a second. What did the top players actually do? Starting off with Pytrek's run here, basically what he did to get 513k was shoving plasma balls up his ass. But to be a little bit more in depth, he actually didn't get any sacrifices on other categories before going for the temple, saving a lot of money in the process. You know, whereas I went for a heli pilot and attack and a glue, cost us several $1,000s later, but the main gist is the tier 5 strategy was Destroyer. He used 8 destroyers, which I swear I did test in one of my spring runs, but it didn't really come close. But I guess I should have tried harder, because this was the most efficient strategy. He also went for a call to arms instead of an energizer, which cost 3k less, but in my testing, they felt very equal. Maybe call to arms a little bit better, but kudos to him. I also want to show Mac and Real Submission, another fellow YouTuber who posted 535,260, which is $20 more than my score. I don't know how we came that close with doing 2 completely different strategies. I know on a different map, but it happened. For better or for worse though, it doesn't matter because we're both in different groups. To where, as you see, he actually placed first place in his group with that score. What did I place in C? Second. Ignore the order, it's not sorted properly, but I was just under $2,000 off of the top in the group, which, while I'm overall happy with the score, hurts to see. Because only after all this time did I realize that, in all that time I spent on tier 5, I overlooked re-optimizing tier 1 a little bit better, which ended up being the difference and costing me, well, 1 point and first place in the group. Which in a way kind of feels worse than not picking the best strategy. Here are the scores in the other groups. So overall, my score ended up placing a 5th place overall out of 96 players. So again, pretty good. For the record, my score in Adora's Temple was actually the 2nd highest, off by under 1,000. Animal here in a different group got 534k with a massive 013 Druid army instead. Can't believe that actually is comparable. But it's time to forget about this week because there is no time to waste. The 2nd week has already been released, and it's a timed mode for those who are wondering, which means that I'm gonna have to spend 30 hours, even if I try to be efficient, so yeah. It would mean a lot if you spent half a second, honestly less than that, pressing that like button in exchange for this absolute sweat storm that is coming out of my body right now. Again, if you missed the first week of this boss tournament, then don't fret. I'm gonna create a playlist over here where you can have all the episodes in one place. Past, present, and future.